Welcome everybody. Today, GIZ is hosting three speakers with enormous experience in textile recycling. And not just recycling in general, but recycling pre-consumer or post-industrial textile waste. And they're going to talk today about a range of projects and topics in which they're involved to help us understand more clearly barriers and opportunities of increasing this type of recycling to the point where it becomes a real and viable business opportunity that can be expanded enormously. My name is Stephen Frost. I'm the moderator today, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of GIZ. Before I introduce our speakers, just bear with me for a couple of minutes while I mention a few things about the WebEx platform. If you're familiar with Zoom, then I'm sure this shouldn't pose very many problems. WebEx have upgraded a lot over the last 6 months, and it looks pretty much like Zoom these days. I'm sure you can work out most things, but let me just invite you, if you would like to, we're not telling you to, but if you would like to, please turn on your camera. And if you do turn it on, you'll see a button for layout in the top right-hand corner on the platform, and you can choose stack or side by side, and those two options allow you to see all the faces on screen in various ways. You can play around with that and work out what's best. And we do invite you to put your camera on if you feel comfortable, because then our speakers can see that they're not just speaking into a black void of nothingness. They can actually feel as though, there are people out there. So that would be helpful if you feel comfortable. We're not demanding that you do it. A few housekeeping issues. First of all, this event is recorded, and the recording will be made available to you via an email with a link in it, so you can share that with people who didn't catch it, or if you want to see parts of it again. Second, you are all in listen-only mode. All attendees are in listen-only mode. We do that because it's just, if we have 100 people on a webinar, it gets a bit crazy if everyone's trying to get on the mic. But you can ask questions, and if you do ask a question, please type it into the chat box. You can see the chat box. There's the little chat box logo down along the bottom. Just click on that, and the chat box comes up on the right-hand side. Just click in just type in a question at any time. We will have a Q&A at the end, but if you ask questions that I think are relevant to the discussion at the particular time, I'll try and fit them in to the discussion as we're going along, and then if there's some questions left over at the end, we'll do a Q&A. If you are directing a question at a speaker, please tell me in the chat box. Say, this is for Anne, or this is for Edwin, so I know who you're asking. And third, this is the final thing, we will have a short survey poll about this event. The IT people will put it into the chat box. It's just a link, and it's a poll about asking you questions about what you think about the webinar or the online seminar. Now, the link will be put there, and we would really appreciate, there's the link now, technical support has just put it in. I'll remind you towards the end of the session as well to do that. We'd appreciate it very much. It does help us improve things. This series is going on all of this year, so we want to try and make it better and better as we go along. So it helps us make things more relevant, make them more informative, produce a better product. Okay, that's all my nonsense at the beginning. Now let's get to the panelists. I'll just introduce the three of them straight up rather than as we go along. So the first guest and be the first speaker is Holly Surratt, Impact Programs and Sustainability Director at the Global Fashion Agenda, an organisation I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Holly joined Global Fashion Agenda as a Senior Sustainability Manager back in May of 2020. around the time when everything went a little bit crazy, to mobilise and guide the fashion industry to take bold action on sustainability through researching, project lead, writing new and existing global fashion agenda publications, commitments and reports, such as the CEO Agenda, a report I'm sure many of you have seen. She brings 10 years of experience working on sustainability and transparency programs in the fashion industry for both public and professional audiences. So a lot of experience. So welcome to Holly. Our second guest is Mr. Edwin Kerr, MH, Chief Executive Officer of the Hong Kong Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel, better known as HK Rita. Edwin was awarded the Medal of Honour, MH, in 2020 by the Hong Kong SAR for his research work during the pandemic. He was named the best of top 50 innovative retail leaders by Inside Retail Hong Kong in 2019. He's on the Debrett's Hong Kong 100 as one of the most influential people in technology and digital sector, and is a recipient of the Production and Operation Management Society's Excellence in Production and Operation Management's Practice Awards. Edwin holds multiple IPs, which have won global invention awards. He's also had a previous life in the fashion industry, in the business, before he turned to the more academic research side. Our third guest is Anne Runnell, founder and CEO of Reverse Resources. Anne has been researching eco-innovation in the textile industry since 2010 to understand how great sustainable innovations can be scaled up, very much in line with what we're talking about today. With her background in economics, she is driven by the question of how the circular economy can be set up profitably and efficiently on a global scale. She is driven to see the slowed down, ethical, circular and functional economy coming true, and has a versatile background from different areas of expertise, including finance and banking, statistics, IT development, voluntary work, startup and business development, and eco-innovation in the global textile industry. So we've got three very experienced speakers with us today. Thank you very much for your time to all of them. So I'd like to start with Holly from GFA to begin with, and I'm pitching this kind of question at Holly just to give us some context and to get the ball rolling on the discussion that we're going to have. Global Fashion Agenda's Circular Fashion Partnership is working with one of the panelists today. GFA is working with Reverse Resources, so Anne. But before we get into that partnership and talking about what's happening there with Reverse Resources, Holly, I'd like to start with a big question, and it is a big question, and you can take it any direction you like. But why hasn't this sort of post-industrial textile recycling scaled up to date? Or to put it another way, so it doesn't sound quite so critical on recycling in general, but what barriers do we need to overcome to scale this up?
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to GIZ and to you for the invitation. It's an honour to be on the panel with Edwin and Anne as well. We don't believe the opportunity for really scaling post-industrial waste has been fully captured yet, because it's often overlooked in the discourse of circularity, which really tends to focus on post-use opportunities, so really post-consumer or clothing. I believe this is twofold. One is we're looking at circularity being discussed from a brand and global north narrative, whereas we actually need this full value chain or value cycle approach. And secondly, post-use waste is really the lion's share of textile waste. So it's more prominent on mind. But this doesn't mean that post-industrial waste can be missed. This is really a low-hanging fruit, as we identify it, that can actually help scale recycling. If you look at post-industrial waste streams, they're more consistent, they're higher quality, they're easier to trace, and require much more simpler sorting and collection than post-use. So it's really an opportunity to scale capacity. If you ask why isn't it happening yet, I believe there are numerous reasons. One, and I'm sure Anne will be talking much more to this, but it's really the visibility and access to those waste streams, understanding, being able to map where they are, tracing them to recycling or being able to do so, and also the issue of ownership. In some circumstances, manufacturers don't feel that they own their own cutting waste, or there's maybe political control in the region of those different waste streams. Some circumstances, we've had conversations where brands feel that they own cutting waste within a manufacturing facility. So really being able to map and understand where that post-industrial waste is and what characteristics it has, I would say is one of the first reasons. Second is we need to be able to present the opportunity of capturing and valorizing this waste and create more awareness about it. So working with Anne and her team in Bangladesh, we were able to start mapping waste streams with, I believe it was almost 80 manufacturers. And we were able to establish that if we were able to capture 100% of the cotton waste within those facilities and recycle it, we would, on a national level, be able to support in reducing the virgin cotton imports. And I think the estimations we made were about 15% of annual virgin cotton imports would be able to be reduced if we just capture and valorize that waste domestically. Those types of figures, and I think it was 750 million US annual savings, are what you need to create political awareness, to understand what is this opportunity, how can we capture this waste and recycle it domestically. So visibility, the business opportunity and making that, creating more awareness about it. And then the third reason why I don't believe it's yet been fully scaled is really having a stable access to feedstock and a consistent demand for the output. So it's really these conditions that we see are necessary to scale recycling technologies, and also to secure, for recyclers to be able to secure investment so that they know that they can access feedstock consistently and securely from manufacturers, but they also have the global demand from brands for recycled materials. And we believe those three different aspects need to be addressed to really be able to scale post-industrial recycling. Oh, I can't hear you, Stephen.
I muted myself. Thank you for telling me. One of the things you said really kind of caught my attention. It's something I've seen before but haven't thought about for a while, which is the idea of brands' idea that they own waste. Can you talk us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So within the Circular Fashion Partnership project, we basically designed a collaboration model where we would invite global brands, manufacturers within specifically Bangladesh last year, and recyclers to collaborate to start mapping out what can a circular system look like together. So going from orders being made within a factory, incentivizing the segregation of textile waste, tracking that through reverse resources system to recyclers, recycling it, and then exploring as a second stage, how can you reintroduce recycled materials back into new productions? And can you create this business model whereas a manufacturer would earn more from its textile waste, but it will also not be too high market, that it would be less interesting for a recycler, but then the recycled materials could also be sold back to that manufacturer and or the brand. And that's when you start talking about the economics. And again, this is what I think the reverse resources team are very equipped at talking to, whereas if you basically what you pay at one end really goes around in a circular system to another. So if you're adding throughout, it can be almost de-incentivizing the business model. And when you get into those discussions, then you start talking about waste ownership. And what we realized in many factories in Bangladesh is that manufacturers themselves were often under pressure from local political control of their waste. So it was actually picked up by different parties and exported in many circumstances, so they wouldn't earn themselves from their current waste streams. So that's one issue. And the second issue was, in some circumstances, brands felt that they had ownership of their waste. Of course, they might have pre-purchased or paid for materials before going into their productions. And we haven't been in discussion with brands who required that they own the waste and earned from it. Overall, there was a discussion that we all have the same goal, and that's being able to capture and valorize the waste, and that it needs to be worthwhile for manufacturers to put all the effort into actually segregating it, storing it, tracking it through a digital system. But it is challenging because in some circumstances, once the money's gone in on one end from brands, they do feel that it's their decision where the waste needs to go. And we haven't landed on like a specific set of criteria, but do believe the industry needs to come to them. So when we're developing these circular systems, what are the rules of play, so to speak? So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but it's kind of the
no. That's interesting, because that's a conversation I think many people who are thinking of post-industrial waste recycling or textile recycling are not thinking about the issue of who owns that waste. If there's money to be made, who gets that? And that's an interesting discussion about the issue of scalability. We're going to be bogged down in discussions of who owns what. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this question from Florian Baranek from UNIDO. To get a bit of a feeling for the size of the fashion industry, could someone just tell us the scale? How many pieces are produced globally every year? Otherwise, it's hard to understand whether recycling claims of brands actually matter or not. Does anyone have that figure off the top of their head? Pieces per year? I can't say that I do.
No, me neither.
I do see numbers flash around, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But the number is significant. Anyway, if someone knows the answer to that, put it in the chat box. We'll give you free entry to the next webinar. Only kidding, they're all free. So you mentioned reverse resources. I was going to go to Edwin next, but I'm going to go to you, Anne, because Holly talked a bit about the project in Bangladesh. Can you give us a description of this project in Bangladesh that Holly mentioned? Tell us about the project, the aims, what you're doing there.
Sure. So Reverse Resources is a software as a service platform, and our mission is to help fashion industry close the loop, take textile waste and put that back into recycled products, which is kind of the whole focus of the project as well. But particularly Bangladesh has been a very interesting place for us to look into that, because when we look at this textile to textile recycling capacity right now globally, then almost all of it focuses on cotton waste. There is very I kind of want to make a bit of a clarification here, that when we talk about recycling in this context, we need to talk about textile to textile recycling, because textile recycling in general is a old business. There is massive industry behind that. It's just that usually textile waste has been flowing to other industries, to other products, low-grade products, like it's been used for production of coarse yarns, carpets, mattress, filling materials into car seats. There is a lot of use cases for that. But now what we're really trying to do is to make sure that textile waste is getting consumed again by the fashion industry, and it is valorized on that highest possible value chain level. And that is where the capacity of recycling is limited. I actually quickly checked when you asked about the volumes of global fashion industry. Then I blog post that we did on how much fashion industry wastes. I have a number in front of my eyes that it's 37 million tons of fiber used by fashion per year. And it is kind of an estimate that only 1% gets recycled. But we have done a recycler library where we have analyzed or captured data from recyclers, textile to textile recyclers, and at the moment that shows us that the volumes, the capacity is increasing from around 50,000 tons of recycling per year to 90,000 tons already within 1 year now. And it's really fastly scaling up. But all the recyclers, they are sensitive now to the exact composition of the waste. And Bangladesh just has such a high volume or concentration of cotton waste, while it has very little recycling inside the country, whereas a lot of the waste has been flowing to India, and India has been recycling a lot next to that. So the project has been focusing on helping. The first priority for us is to visualize the waste, make sure that we know how much is there, which is the proportion of waste streams by composition, by color, by material type, because these are the questions that recyclers really need. And so we always start from the like the waste mapping logic, how much is there, and it is quite simple profiling of factories, who they are, what do they produce, what are the usual materials that run through their production on a regular basis. And from there, we go to this matchmaking phase where we suggest that this and that recycler could be connected with this and that factory. And then the question is, what is the supply chain? How can we actually help the recycler access the waste? And here, what is really important is to understand the value or the importance of the middlemen, the traders. So traditionally, the waste market has been managed by the traders who go to the factories, they get all the waste, they manually sort out the better part, they sell it forward. But what happens naturally on the market is that the material goes through 4 or 5 different middlemen before it reaches a recycler, whoever that is then. Because the first one is the first point collector. They manually sort out something, they sell it forward. The next one aggregates the materials. Third one maybe has even bigger volumes. Fourth one has an export license. Fifth one has an import license, and so it goes. So what Reverse Resources platform is helping to do is that we connect the supplier and the recycler digitally first, and then we appoint a best possible waste handler, because waste handler is really important in that collection, in that second cleaning. The factories are sorting it by composition in the factory now, but somebody needs to clean that one more time, take out small paper, plastic, wrong color threads that always happen to be there. So the cleaning, aggregation of bigger volumes before you go into the heavier logistics. So the handler actually helps to optimize that supply chain. But as soon as you work with a handler in between, again, even one handler makes that trace go broken. So Reverse Resources as a platform helps to keep that trace and maintain and really help to optimize that supply chain to the most efficient level, and in many, many ways bring down the cost of sourcing for the recyclers. And that helps scaling up recycling.
Why did you choose Bangladesh?
Because of such big volume of cotton. Waste in general has very little value. So to prove a business case, we needed to start big, and then we can go smaller. And Bangladesh really has a lot of cotton waste that is not properly sorted, not properly used, and there was just very, very big potential.
When I was listening to you talking about your platform, so you've got a platform where these parties can be can be connected, can be put together, right? It sounds complicated. Is
Yes.
it? Yes.
It is, because when we look at from that SaaS model and our business case perspective, then usually a business case has two sides. Somebody sells something, somebody buys something. Exceptional is if you have three sides, that you're dependent on something to sell to another person. In our case, the business case consists of 5 parties. The garment factory producing as a supplier of the waste, the handler, recycler, the brand, who is critical participant, because they have the power to invite factories to start segregation of the waste. Otherwise, the motivation to do that would be very small. Even though the price of the waste goes up and the factories actually earn from it, but it's still a secondary topic in their main business case. So brands need to do that invitation, and brands are also on the other side looking at or really interested in sourcing the recycled product. So there is this triangle that starts to happen between brand, factory, and recycler. So this is four parties, plus then Rivers Resources as a digital tool there. So we have a business case with 5 critical stakeholders, and that makes it really complicated, because we have to consider everybody's interests. We have to build software tools for every 4 stakeholders, depending on what is their actual interest and need and drive to participate in that. So, and there is really a lot of different angles that need to be considered here.
So if I was thinking of doing this, I can't just walk into Bangladesh and, so I mean, when did you start this, and who helps you get all of these people together? Is that part of GFA's task? I mean, how does all this get started? How do you get this up and running?
Yeah, so Rivers Resources started in 2014 with an idea. First year we couldn't find any support or anything, but the idea originated from, like, I got the chance to visit Bangladesh and the garment factory, one of the biggest ones back in 2013. And that was together with an upcycling designer, fashion brand, who was interested to use deadstock fabrics in their designs. But I kind of was shocked to see how much waste there was, and then I realized that this wasn't just one brand that can solve this problem. So I was always interested to find an economic and a systemic solution there. So yeah, in 2014, I registered a company with the idea to start looking for funding, and then a year later, I first stumbled upon Climate Launchpad program in Europe, and basically 2 months later, we won the Global Change Award from H&M Foundation. And back then, the idea really was to create the marketplace for fabrics for upcycling designer brands. But then through H&M Foundation Award and the chance to kind of really start a dialogue with H&M and understand how a big corporate is looking at their waste, that led us to run a pilot project with with H&M Smaller Brand Weekday, where we analyzed the use of deadstock fabrics. But we realized through that pilot that there is a huge conflict of interest between the factories and the brands, the buyers, that is very risky for the factories to share waste volumes per order. They are okay to share it in bulk, as we are now asking it. We are asking to sort composition-wise, but not brand-wise. And there is kind of like a balance in the interest. So we pivoted to look into the cutting waste issues, and we discovered that the problem that on the market was much bigger with compared to deadstock, because deadstock fabrics actually has buyers and a whole market behind it. It's not, you can't really call that waste, whereas cutting scraps really is waste, because there isn't, like, often it really gets into a landfill or being burned as fuel instead of getting used. So yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah, look, the reason I asked that is because I think it gives people a good insight that this is not snap your fingers and things start happening. Everyone's dying to recycle post-industrial textile waste. That's not the case. There's a question here in the box that fits right into what you're saying, Anne. Anne, what is your strategy to get your platform crowded with brands, factories, handlers, recyclers? What is the expected growth? And which countries after Bangladesh are are your strategic targets next?
Mm-hmm. So the strategy really is to work closely with the brands, because before we started collaboration with Holly team, Global Fashion Agenda and the Circle Fashion Partnership, then it took us something like 2 years to run after factories one by one and try to invite them on the platform. And we had 3 factories, but we couldn't scale this up because factories were not interested in starting segregation of waste just for the recyclers. So that's why that's when the project with Global Fashion Agenda launched. This was also actually the beginning of our where we could actually show the business case start to kind of come to life. So yeah, strategy is to really work with the brands, because they can invite their factories. They are interested to get that recycled materials back. And we are offering a tool for them to really connect their own supply chain. Whereas maybe one of our more critical parts of the value proposition to the brands is that what Holly was explaining, that ownership issue. It also relates very much with that logistics and the operational efficiency, that factories shouldn't segregate their waste brand by brand on top of compositions and colors that they have to keep separate. So we are helping brands to quantify by estimates and by other, like by data, how big proportion of that waste was yours, and find these rules and kind of agreements on the platform between themselves. So we are, as we have been starting more, maybe sometimes being mixed up with as if we were like a trader ourselves, because we have been doing a lot of buying of the waste and selling it to the recyclers. We are shifting more and more to that role of just being a software as a service platform for the stakeholders to organize these material flows between themselves. There is a component of a marketplace for low-grade waste. There is a component of strategic partnerships. So it is quite complicated system, but yeah. As we are growing into that role of software as a service more, we already have factories on the platform from 5 different countries. It is not only Bangladesh anymore, whereas brands are inviting factories from other countries themselves and taking more active role already, inviting recyclers and connecting these stakeholders themselves, and then reverse resources team doesn't have to be part of that operational side anymore.
So you don't have a strategic country that you're targeting. You're just finding this growing organically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We already are in working very thoroughly in India. We have projects running in Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt together with the UNIDO. With like this year, we will have projects in Vietnam, Indonesia starting. So we are expanding quite fast. Yeah.
What about expected growth? Have you got any? Can you tell us anything about growth, scale, size? You know, what's happening?
Maybe it's a good moment to put on a screenshot of a public dashboard that we are about to launch, which is showing live data from the platform and updating itself in real time. It shows the volume of a number of factories that we have on the platform. So as we have been doing this waste mapping service, we also want to add here a bigger overview of how much waste have we mapped out. But this, what you can see here, is like a subset of those factories who are using the platform or on a daily basis. Right now, and how much waste are they registering on the platform and where that is going. So we have 5 countries here. You can see that 1/4 of this of their waste has been actually traced to a certain textile-to-textile recycling solution. There is overview of compositions, material types, and colors. So in 2021, we in total traced over 5,000 tons of waste. And this 5,000 tons is actually a very tiny fraction, because some of the recyclers that we work with are already scaling up to 5,000 tons of recycling per month this year. So we really need to scale up really fast to be able to help those recyclers.
I think this dashboard is fantastic. And just to clarify on this, we're getting a kind of a sneak preview here, aren't we?
Yes. So this is we're adding some more things in here before we actually publish this openly, but it will be a tool for everybody to have statistics, what's actually happening in that textile to textile recycling world.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a launch date?
I haven't actually put in a date, but I would suggest that it happens within this month.
All right, that's you know, if you're on this webinar, I would be definitely thinking to keep my eye open for this reverse resources dashboard. It looks fantastic. Anne showed this. We had a little sneak peek of this yesterday or the day before on a call, and I was very interested in this, and I was able to look around in it a bit. There's a lot more stuff here. You can look by country, etc. While we're talking about country here, Mudassar Adil, I presume from Pakistan, says, Anne, any plans for Pakistan?
Yes, Pakistan is a country where we really want to go next as well, because Pakistan, similar to Bangladesh, has a lot of cotton waste, and this is very, very interesting for us. So we're looking around and trying to find a way in and launch first pilots there soon as well. But I'm happy to, yeah, if anybody wants to get connected, then please reach out.
Okay. Okay, he's saying thank you, Mudassar Adil, for that question. Let me turn to actually, let me go back to Holly, because while I'm going to get to you, Edwin, in a moment, don't worry. But Holly, can you explain how did you and Reverse Resources get together, and how do you work together? What's happening there?
Been quite a journey. We've, as you said, we embarked on our journey together just before the pandemic struck and had this huge plan to collaborate with multiple manufacturers, do lots of in-person trainings and whatnot. But it really started from, I guess, for Global Fashion Agenda, the journey started back in 2017, and that's when we launched a circularity commitment targeted at brands. It was a phased out commitment that focused on design for circularity, a collection system, circular business models, and recycled materials. And I think there was about 100 brands who signed all of those different commitments and reported back on their progress up until 2020. And that was really a resource for us to start understanding where the gaps lied between what brands can independently do on their journey towards more circular systems and where support is really needed. And we were really able to see that there's lots of aspects, especially in recycled materials, that brands couldn't tackle themselves, and that there was a huge gap in the overall perspective. So looking at a value cycle approach towards a circular economy that I mentioned before. And that the Global Fashion Agenda was the starting point to think about how we could use our role as an industry convener and a communicator to support Reverse Resources, with all of their experience already in Bangladesh, and the system and the technology that they offer was a natural match for us. So our role is bringing in the voice of the brands. We work with 20 global brands within the specific project, and really communicating and conducting research. Reverse Resources, understanding what waste segregation entails, being able to make the connections between the waste types and all of the recyclers in their network. I believe there's 100, 20 of which are involved in the project. But there's also a third key partner that we've not yet mentioned, and that was the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association. They were really the partner on the ground who worked with us to engage their manufacturer community, and not only that, but really to engage local policymakers and different types of governmental associations to supporting creating awareness about the project, to addressing barriers, and to having very frank conversations, for instance, about political control. So it's really those three different types of organizations working together. So starting from a partnership ourselves, and then through that being able to realize a project that is yet another partnership between the brands, manufacturers, and recyclers. So yeah, it was for us, I think, for all parties involved, a very learning experience as well. How do we collaborate together with these very different types of skill sets? And we were grateful to receive funding for the project from an organization called Partnership for Growth. And they support with 50-50 grants to really scale systemic transformation in lots of different fields, and circularity is one of them. Yeah, so that's how we work together. In reality, it became basically weekly collaborations, if not daily. But even though we started at a very tricky time and it took us quite some time to get the project off the ground, we soon were able to excite brands. There was a wait list for brands at one point, because they really see the need to collaborate on these types of topics. And I think that's definitely a strength of the project, being able to bring in the different stakeholders and almost have very pragmatic conversations as well. Even if we look at all of the steps that need to be taken to build these systems, what is the quality of the recycled material output? Is that usable by different design teams within brands? What type of education is needed there? And how can you work together to manage the expectation between what's now available and what may be available at a later point in time?
Yeah, I was interested to hear you mention a party that we hadn't talked about yet in all of these complicated moving parts, was the BGMEA. Anne, can I just come back to you, because Holly mentioned the BGMEA and I thought of something that you mentioned earlier, which got me thinking too. You said Reverse Resources faced some factory resistance. Can you tell us a bit about why are factories resistant, and then what role did the BGMEA play? Was that the organisation that cracked everything open for you?
I think that resistance is coming from so many different levels, starting from anytime you ask somebody to do something completely new and you have to put some effort in that is an effort. That risk of sharing the exact information about your waste, that waste ownership issue, because factories, it is a common situation that factories are selling their waste, they are earning or getting a bit of cash, and it's instant cash flow for them, which is a really important thing that needs to be considered. So if a brand now starts to ask for the waste, how can I know that they're not going to claim back the waste and I'm going to lose that cash flow? In Bangladesh, there is very, very big issue around that political, informal market interest, where factories are often forced to sell that waste to a party that is appointed to them. Otherwise, they may get in trouble. So there are many, many different issues. So we have taken this on such a level that we ask nicely. We don't demand anything. It's very, very voluntary for the factories how they want to get engaged. And BGMEA for us has been very important partner in that sense, that because they are on the ground, they are so well aware of the situation. They have been giving us a lot of very good advice in that process, how to approach that, how to kind of really step by step move further and build what the industry actually needs, because there is really a huge business opportunity, but it needs to be guided slowly, step by step. So I would say that this has been the main value from that collaboration with them.
Yeah, I think if anyone's been watching BGMEA press releases over the last year or more, will have seen a marked increase in talk about sustainability, eco, green, whether it's LEED certified factories, whether it's recycling. The textile waste recycling in Bangladesh has been getting quite a lot of positive press in the Bangladesh media recently. So there's clearly a lot of interest in the country. We've also got in the chat box, I don't know if you've seen, but Ramon Sateza from the Philippines saying, any particular interest in the Philippines? We're not as a significant producer like Bangladesh, Cambodia or Vietnam, but we produce the major brands. So off you go to the Philippines, Anne. Also, Muzamil is giving you some, offering his research assistance in Pakistan. So the offers are flooding in. I hope you've got time to deal with all of these new countries coming online. Great. Okay, now I will turn to Edwin. Edwin, now, HK Rita. So Edwin is the CEO of HK Rita. HK Rita is not a platform like Reverse Resources. HK Rita, I'm sure many of you have heard about, and their famous green machine. The green machine's been in the press a lot over the last couple of years. I've visited the green machine in Hong Kong. I used to teach at a university in Hong Kong, teaching sustainability for business students. And every now and then, several of them would go down and look at it, to do a talk on the green machine. So a very interesting machine. Edwin, can you tell us a bit about the green machine? Just a brief description of what it is. And then tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Cambodia, because today we're looking at waste in production countries. So Anne's been talking about Bangladesh, but as we've seen, it's not just Bangladesh. If you looked on her dashboard, you would have seen India and China and I forget the other countries, and we've got Philippines and Pakistan jumping into the mix. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing with Cambodia, but also I know HK Rita is also involved, like Reverse Resources, in many other things.
Well, thank you, Stephen. First of all, I was having a really good time listening to Holly and Anne. We could have spent the whole time doing that. I guess all the waste that was identified by Anne then needs to be processed, and this is where we come in. The green machine is one of a series of recycling projects that we have at the research center has done over the last couple of years, and it deals with a particular challenge with blended materials. When we started seriously getting into identifying solutions for recycling for this industry in around 2015, 2016, through a funding with the H&M Foundation. And the first year, what we did was we tried to identify what the challenges are and what the existing technologies are and what the opportunities are. And what we found is that, alarmingly, polyester as a material that has been growing very, very fast in the last 10 years or so. It's more, and now it's more used in a larger percentage than, say, cotton, which used to be forever the most popular material. And then not only that, we tend to more and more blend materials in with polyester so that we can capture the best of both worlds. It's lightweight, it has performance characteristics, it's cheap, and it's versatile, if you will. But then the challenge is that once you blend materials, it is very, unless you can separate it, it is very hard to recycle them. Or if you can recycle them, you can only downcycle them to something that is of less value. So the green machine was a project we started working on in 2016 to figure out a way that can separate materials, but at the same time we want to do it in a way that can get this scaled up and into the marketplace. So we want it to be cost effective. We want it to be quite versatile, so that it's somewhat non-discriminating. It doesn't matter what the input, it'll come out. It can process it, and we want it to also to be able to deal with issues at multiple stages of the problem. So it is currently being used as a post-industrial waste solution, but we currently also have inquiries for it as a post-consumer waste solution, because it can deal with that as well. So the technology uses basically heat and pressure to process materials, blended materials, and separate them into the different materials without using much of anything else. So it's fairly cost effective. It doesn't create a new waste stream, and it's a fiber to fiber solution. So in the case of polyester, blended material goes in, polyester comes out, and it comes out in staple fiber form. So basically, without more chemical processing, you twist this stuff together and you make new yarns, and away you go. You can reuse it. So it's a very short way to reprocess materials, and because of that, it's cost effective. And because we're using a very benign process, heat and pressure, it doesn't damage the material in the processing. And in our studies, basically, whatever form the polyester goes in is the form that it comes out. So it is the opportunity for us to reuse the material over and over again, as opposed to a one-off RPET, say. So we were quite excited about this, and it's certainly not. It's a piece of a puzzle, right? It deals with a blended material. It deals with does very well with petroleum-based polyester material, and it is quite cost effective because of the way we process it, and it's quite cost effective because as we scaled up the solution, we were able to, instead of fabricate custom machinery to deal with this, we were able to repurpose die vats and other existing machinery to go through this process. And as a result of which, the ROI of this system is quite short, depending on which country you're operating in, somewhere between 18 to 36 months, let's say. And the operating costs are quite low, because it's a fairly short process, and the current design of the system is a tandem process. And because it can be post-consumer or post-industrial, it can either be an industrial solution or a first world solution. So that's kind of sort of where, and why Cambodia is because Cambodia is growing as a manufacturer of a lot of ready-to-made apparel. And so there were GIZ we worked with GIZ and proposed a solution to see if there is a way that we can address some of the issues in Cambodia. Currently, the first operating system is in Indonesia, and the second system probably will be up and running in Turkey, and then we'll have this will be our third system, and then there are other systems in the work.
Edwin, this just to clarify, this this thing that you're doing in Cambodia, what you're doing in Cambodia is a feasibility study, right? You're not.
Yeah, right. But at scale, and that's a very good point, Stephen. One of the things we want to do, there were basically two large goals that we want to achieve with this project. One is this a new disruptive method to process waste, so that it with a good business case behind it. But the other thing we wanted to do with this was to create a disruptive research methodology. We started working on this in 2016, and we had our first scaled up model, the one that you saw in Hong Kong, up and running in 2018. And the pandemic slowed us down a little bit, but the first industrial operational system is up and running in 2021. And what we you know that the traditional research model is you do stuff in the lab, you publish papers, you have bench scale studies, you have pre-industrial scale studies, and you have a 10-year road to market. And as we started working on sustainability, what we said is that we don't have 10 years. We got to solve these problems quickly. So is there a new research model that can get us from an idea to a solution much faster? And this is the proof of concept for that as well.
Do we have a picture of the green machine?
I'm sure someone does. So that's the Hong Kong model. So
yeah.
So this is a small scale. This is a working system. This is about 150 kilos a day. So the industrial scale models start at about 1.5 tons a day. And if we listen to the millions of tons that we heard earlier, this is a drop in the bucket. We have to scale these things up much faster.
Yeah, someone's asking, do we have a picture of the Indonesian one? I think that might be a bridge too far.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it should eventually be on our website. It's not a big secret. That system will make those available as well. Another one of the things that we do as a research, we're a not-for-profit research center. We're a research platform, so we don't have a lot of secrets. So we share. We don't care.
So I think the IT people can put a. All right, technical support has just put a link to the Green Machine website here. I think someone put this up before. So look in the chat box. The tech team is putting quite a few links in there for you to have a look at. Anne is also putting some stuff in there as well for people who might be interested. Tell me, you mentioned Indonesia and Turkey, and I think you mentioned earlier to me before the online seminar, in Turkey, you're working with ISCO, is that correct?
Yes. They're a denim supplier.
So very large.
Oh yeah, and so this is another one of the things that is quite interesting. Everything you've heard me talk about, it has addressed the polyester side of things. So why is a denim supplier interested? Because of the stuff that happened after we started working on this. Because we were also producing the cotton side, and we sort of neglected all the cellulosic materials that were coming out of it. And what we found is that in 2020, after we started commercializing and building the Indonesian system, we said, oh, we better do something with the cellulose as well. And currently we've got 3 exciting products from the cellulosic side. We are able to use the cellulose, functionalize the cellulose to make a PFC-free DWR coating material, which solves some of the outdoor industry challenges. So it's a DWR treatment that is using this cellulose material. We are making a new viscose in Japan. We're working to develop functionalize this into a new viscose that is made from about 60 to 80% recycled cellulose, and we functionalize it for UV blocking, heat management, and moisture management. So a petroleum-free high-performance material. And the third output, which we're very excited about, is a project that we're doing in India right now, and we're growing irrigation-free cotton. We functionalize the cellulose to become a super absorbent polymer that can absorb and release moisture. And so we just asked ourselves, what would happen if we put this in the roots of cotton and leave it alone and see what happens? Well, what happened was that cotton grew faster, yields improved per acre, and cotton fibers were longer. So that was the result of our first small-scale experiment. We're about to announce the second experiment. They're a much larger growing experiment. And then in the process, we're also working on, can this grow organic cotton? Can we use this for non-GMO cotton? Now, there are other things we can do with this stuff. Can we grow food with it? Can we add nutrients into this? So there's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing there, but there is this messiness and fuzziness with the research, especially when we are announcing things and throwing things in the market without going through the neat and tidy linear sort of growth that most projects go through. Good news is that so far so good. We've got some interesting outputs that we're excited about, but not for the faint of heart, I guess.
Yeah, right. So can you tell us a little bit about those outputs? If maybe you could use the ISCO example in Turkey or the Indonesian example. Like what's the scale of what you're doing there, and what are you getting from that? What have you seen with this operating on the ground?
They are so in Indonesia we are dealing with cut waste. So we're dealing with a manufacturer called Pahatex, and they go through about I think 10 million tons a year in materials, and so they estimate they have about a 10% cut waste. So they have 1 million tons of cutting loss, right? So this is they're processing all this. It's a really easy solution for them because they're a vertical supplier. So they're able to group things by color, by content, so able to process these things very quickly and very quickly get them back into their production systems. So that's how they're working with it. ISCO is producing some polyester, which they want to process with this. They are also looking at this as a way of getting further upstream into the cotton supply chain as well. And so they are very excited about a lot of the cellulose output as well. And the other thing good about the hydrothermal system is that it has a good tolerance for contaminants. So because a lot of spandex lycra is also being used in denim products these days, and that's problematic for a lot of systems. It's not as big of an issue with the hydrothermal system. We're able to manage those as well. So in the denim wool, at least, if we get to 20 or 30% lycra, it's a different story. but so they are able to reprocess high value material that they can use in-house as well. Cambodia, we're looking at seeing how we can shorten the whole recycled the cycle, but also get valuable outputs that they can reuse again in the manufacturing process as well.
And you raise your hand.
Yeah, but Edwin just replied to my question. I wanted to ask him.
I mean, our intention, and is to make sure that stuff that is produced in the factory, if we have systems like this, don't end up in that very, very long and complicated supply chain that you're managing, right, with 5 layers of middlemen, so that it can go very quickly and very economically back into useful production.
Yeah, maybe I could comment here that first of all, it's not 5 layers of middlemen that we manage. We make sure that there is never more than one middleman. But what we also see is that when the first recycling plant or like a first initiative is set up and it's just in the phase of starting up, and the volumes aren't that big, then it is really easy to set up that recycling next to vertically integrated factory, for example, use their waste locally and get that loop closed on site. Where our platform comes in is where those recycling plants now understand suddenly that there is only a proportion of their own waste that can be used, whereas they still have rest of the waste that needs to find something else. Like more blends, for example, and it really depends on the recycling technology that is set up. And they still need to source waste from others as well. So there needs to be still connection. And the other thing is that now when you look at, you want to start scaling up that production to really large volumes, like we have a recycler that needs 5,000 tons of waste per month, which is over 100 shipping containers, and one shipping container takes usually 10 factories to merge that volume of like for like every factory is giving like maybe 5 or 10% of their waste to that recycler. So you end up having that matrix of a lot of small supply needing to be aggregated into big volumes together. And that's where the middleman comes in to optimize these routes. So it's a scaling problem that we are solving.
I suspect there will still be things that we need to work with you on exactly that, because I think there's a lot of that the waste stream is quite complicated. I mean, our intention here is that today you're right. I really appreciate your comments about how complicated it is on the ground. Today, those cutting wastes generates an income for factories, and what we want to do is to create a better business model for the factory. So you sell this for X, but this is now a higher value product if you go through this system, and you can actually put it back into your production line. So it incentivizes them to actually do the processing and maximize the waste.
Yeah.
Or hopefully we will stop calling them waste, after a while.
Yeah. Edward, you mentioned the Indonesian factory. I didn't catch the name. Was it Gartex, was it?
Gartex.
1 million tons of offcuts of waste. How much can you get through of that? I mean, what's your plans? Is the green machine going to eventually deal with 1 million tons?
Yeah.
Wow.
If we, I mean, our great ambitions is to have these working in the larger production economies. So Bangladesh, China, obviously are the big ones. And in larger production economies, there are two models, and we're still working through trying to figure out which ones make more sense. You can have a dispersed model, so you can have localized tanks working, and they could be smaller units doing 10 tons, 20 tons a day, or you can have centralized models that are doing 500 tons or 1,000 tons a day. And what we're trying to do is figure out which one of these make economic sense. And so there is still more testing, especially when we get beyond the 10, 20 tons a day. So lots of work still ahead.
Yeah, a million tons is, yeah, yes. There's a couple of questions here that I would like to get to. So I'm just scrolling. I'm going back quite a way now to Himadri. Himadri asked a question. I think this must be to Anne. So reverse resources. What is your plan to put the recycling technology close to waste generation point? For instance, Bangladesh needs to send waste to other countries for recycling most of the time and import fabric. So Bangladesh, we all know Bangladesh imports most of the fabric. And what could be done for the capacity development of recyclers operations in Bangladesh?
Maybe Holly wants to reply to that.
Oh, Holly, she's throwing that over to you.
Sure. So right now, the essence of our project is really to see how can we scale recycling capacity in Bangladesh domestically and in different production countries. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the work that's happening at the European level, and Eurotex really developing these different recycling hubs throughout Europe to capture post-consumer waste. And our goal is to do similar in production countries as well. And so it's really exciting to hear also from Edwin, and I wanted to ask how what barriers you face for scale right now. But to do so in Bangladesh, we really need to present this business model and create a conducive environment for investment. So there are recyclers in the country already. Cyclo is, for instance, one of them that we work very closely with, that really want to scale. There's the brand demand to scale, but to do that, they need secure feedstock. And so they need access to these waste streams. And that's really a political issue. So one thing is, with Reverse Resources team and all the work that they're doing, is to really incentivize manufacturers and to make it appealing to them, what we've talked about. But political control of waste streams in Bangladesh has been our #1 barrier in the project. We can't really further scale the work without that being addressed. And that really has to be a political dialogue. And we're coming up to OECD. We actually have an event next week to talk about this, what needs to happen at a national level, but also at a supranational level. That's the #1 barrier. Of course, you need to create, to make it easy to invest and to open recycling facilities. So we have been working with the likes of the export processing zones in Bangladesh, with different government authorities, to create like this ideal investor package. But yeah, politically, that's the #1 focus. So what pragmatically we'll be looking to do is really conduct a detailed analysis of different policies where reforms needed, but at the same time having a very nuanced dialogue with different players in Bangladesh. And that's not something that we could do independently, but really with local stakeholders on how do we address the political control and ensure that we can create a value system that everyone profits from and incentivizes the right behaviors.
Edwin, what's your barrier to scaling up, as per Holly's question?
Well, the current one is of course everybody is recovering from 2 turbulent years, right? So this is trying to change tires on a moving vehicle. This is everybody just wants to be on an even keel before they try anything new. So you hear a lot of that, those hesitancies. I think the other one is that for all the talk about partnership, we still have very transactional relationships in the supply chain. So to have a little bit longer commitment, a firmer commitment from the customer is something that we hear a lot about. Look, if this is an 18-month, 36-month depreciation, can we have that that agreement so that whatever we produce, there is a marketplace for it? Would be one. I think thirdly, it's just it's a new technology. If some people basically said this sounds too good to be true. You know, there's got to be something there, and so it's important for us to have a couple of sites up and running so that people can have look at it and have some real world experience with it.
Yeah. There's another question here from Florian. Sorry, did someone want to add something there?
Yeah, I wanted to add that that there is one barrier for scaling up, which is more systemic, is that when majority of the recycling technology that is market ready is focusing on cotton waste, then it is really important to make sure that those technologies distribute fairly around the supply of the waste, and that not all rush into investing into the same technologies, but that the distribution of the technology is kind of related to the waste streams. And that is why we have the market insight is critical, actually, and mapping the waste streams and all that. So we have seen our role as helping recyclers to do this market, get that market's insight, because otherwise the decisions can be really misinformed.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind everybody to click on the survey poll link if you haven't done so. We're heading into the last 10 or 12 minutes of the event now. So if you do want to help us improve, please click on that survey link. I've got another question here from Florian from UNIDO. Are there also programs, ideas, technologies for accessories or trims, right? Buttons, zippers. Zippers in particular put a very interesting stat in the chat box where we just saw the annual global zipper production is around 7 million kilometers per year. So any programs for recycling when it comes to trims, accessories?
So
yeah, go ahead, Anne.
No, I just wanted to say that on our platform, we are actually mapping out any waste from production. It's not just cutting scraps. So we actually have insight into other, like any like dead stock, trims, also plastics, paper, like anything that comes from factories. It is more the question is, are the factories actually sharing that information? And the other thing is that from our platform perspective, we need that other party, the recycling side, to be already established and ready to buy those volumes. So we can't really help that in that early stage of development of recycling technologies. And that's where we actually haven't done much research on other materials getting recycled, but happy to collaborate in projects like that.
Edwin?
In our world, the inquiry for we call these hard trims recycling. The inquiry is coming a lot from the post-consumer consuming economies. So trims and buttons on clothes ready for recycling are mostly in the EU and the US, let's say, and other consuming economies. So the work we're doing there is machine learning and machine vision. So we have some AI programs and some computer vision programs that we're developing, systems that we're developing right now for these systems to automatically identify the type of apparel that is going through, the material that the composition of the garment, and then identify the hard and soft trims. The soft trims are the labels and other things that are attached to the garment, and the hard trims are the buttons and the zippers. And then follow up our systems to then automatically remove those, because dealing with all those are quite labor intensive. And certainly for post-consumer, you don't want a lot of workers dealing with unknown content, unknown origin materials until you have sterilized them or what have you. So as much as possible, automating all of these, and then figuring out what to do with some of these would probably be the next stage of our research. Do we melt all the metals down, or are there other applications for buttons and things like that?
I've got a couple more questions. I'm going to join some of them together. Chung Wei Ni asks Anne, so very quick response, Anne, just to this one. Do you recycle the waste in Bangladesh, or do you transport it out?
Majority of, not majority, but a lot of the waste is recycled inside Bangladesh. And there is very, very strong interest for all the stakeholders to keep the waste in Bangladesh. It is just a question of lack of recycling capacity right now, and the huge demand. But and traditionally there is a lot of material movement from Asia to European recyclers, because there is no the post-consumer waste can't be sorted by composition right now yet, as accurately as the textile-to-textile recyclers would like that to be. But we are also preparing some pilot projects to investigate how can we help with post-consumer to create like a digital warehouse for post-consumer, so that recyclers in Europe don't need to be that dependent on the waste from Asia, and then these routes will be shorter and shorter over the time.
Thank you. Wayne also asked this question, but also Mr. Asaduzzaman, about the quality of recycled material. And Mr. Asaduzzaman, what about the quality of products made from pre-consumer textile waste? Will the brand's quality be maintained with the price? I agree with your assertions. I believe that brands are interested, and the Bangladeshi government supports will have a positive impact on our textile environment. But getting back to this question of quality, this may be something that Edwin also wants to say. But first, just to Anne.
I guess the quality depends on which product are you talking about. Is it what are you trying to target? Do you try to target really nice thin fabric, or is it the coarser yarn from for sweaters? But in general, I would say that many recyclers have reached a really high quality level where there is no difference between the virgin product and the recycled product. So and the pricing is, I would say that recycled product doesn't have to be more expensive. There are cases where recycled is actually even 30% cheaper. But it really depends, again, how short are the links between the locations, and yeah, it depends on the product definitely, and the share of waste compared to the proportion of waste used in the yarns, and all many different questions.
Yeah.
Can I just ask IT to send the survey link again? Someone in the chat box is asking for that. Edwin, did you have something to say about quality? You mentioned quality before.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that consumers don't want to pay more for recycled content, and nor do the brands. Nor do they want, as much as possible, not to have to compromise on performance or comfort. So in 2019, we shipped our first shipment out of that typo factory that you were at, Stephen, for H&M men's, and they didn't mention that it was recycled content, and nobody knew. It was an intentional experiment on our part. It was because you wanted the hand feel and everything to be the same. In that case, it was a chief value recycled content. I think in that product we had about 65% recycled content. So there are ways to get to make sure you maintain some of that performance by blending in some virgin content and to have better and better processing capabilities with the material that you recycle. But for sure, I think you can't expect consumers to buy things out of the goodness of their heart, and because that just won't scale. And you want this to be just as good as and cost about the same as.
Well, the last question from Mr. Asaruzaman is so complicated. I'm going to ask it, but I'm not going to expect an answer. This could be a whole online seminar. And his question is, how can a circular economy strategy and a fast fashion strategy coexist? Boom. I think we all can appreciate we're not going to get through that in the 30 seconds remaining for our three panelists to speak. But I appreciate the question. It's certainly in line with what we've been talking about, but we just can't, unless we've got 90 more minutes, we're not going to get onto that. Great question, but I'm going to have to call it. I'm going to have to call it a day there. Oh, you want Anne's going to give me the 15-second answer. Go.
I can. So fast fashion is, in essence, is our need to dress up and change what we have. But if you now think of a wardrobe as a service model, you can actually build a whole circular system of how we deliver clothes really fast and change what I have in my wardrobe while actually giving endless circulation and life cycle for fibers. It is possible.
All right. Last word to Holly, and then I'm taking over, okay?
I think the main goal is how do we reduce the need of virgin materials to get on the 1.5 degree pathway? If we've talked a lot about recycling today, of course, for post-industrial, but it starts with designing for longevity, using materials that aren't virgin. And I think we just take the full approach. So with that, reducing the need for what we need, capturing recycled materials and extending the longevity of all of the garments that we, as Anne was saying, have this lone business model, I think is providing answers to that question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm impressed. Yeah, leaves us with 1 minute. Excellent. Look, thank you to our three panelists. I'm sure that everybody who's still here on the call will join me in some digital applause or some virtual applause for our three panelists. This has been a really great discussion. Thank you so much. Really well done. Once again, survey, if you haven't done it, you've got time to do it. It's very short. Just click the link, do our little poll, and we'll improve. We'll try to improve. Well, that's it. On behalf of GIZ Fabric, of GIZ, I would like to thank all of you for dialing in and staying on. We value your support. And thanks again, of course, for our panelists. If I didn't get to all the questions, I'm sorry. I apologise, but we really got down to the last second here. And that's all from me. Until next time, take care, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Edwin.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stephen.
Great stuff. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.